Hope for Tomorrow is sponsored by Stonegate Center, providing effective Christian drug and alcohol addiction treatment for men.
Welcome to our first official show, Hope for Tomorrow. I'm Dr. Nina Rios-Doria.
And I'm Todd Baker. You know, the goal of our show is to educate, help, and inspire you to make positive changes in your life. We're going to be discussing different counseling topics on our show each week. And today, we're going to be covering a topic that affects more than 18% of the adult U.S. population. We'll be discussing anxiety.
So, right now, if you're running around and you just turn to us, please grab a pencil, paper. We have some great information to share about anxiety because we all deal with it. And we're going to give you some great strategies on how to reduce it as well, because it is a heavy topic and we all deal with anxiety.
Yes, I agree. In fact, we're kind of experiencing a little bit right now, I think, for our first show, right?
Well, yes, and it's funny, when I was coming in here, I was driving and there was a motorcycle driving around me, and that brings anxiety because I have these thoughts that are coming in my mind, which we're going to talk about what thoughts are all about and what they do to you. Mm-hmm. And I'm finding myself experiencing a little anxiety, but I'm using the strategies that we're going to teach them.
That's right.
To help reduce it. But yeah, we experience it every day in every situation.
Well, we'll put some numbers on it.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. I mentioned 18%, but let's just put some real numbers on it. That's about 1.4 million adults in the U.S. that do experience anxiety or some sort of anxiety-related issue.
Right.
And of course, that doesn't include the children we see or teens, which is really increasing a lot. I don't know if you see a lot of teens that deal with anxiety, but I know I work with a lot of teens that deal with anxiety.
Well, we both do, and a big one is school and the stress and tests.
The pressure they have to go through.
The pressure they have today. So yeah, for our viewers listening, I'm sure this is just a relatable topic, and we have some great tips. I know you have a great analogy when it comes to anxiety that you wanted to share.
Well, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I like to imagine that inside all of us, we have kind of a big, I call it a rain barrel, okay? So I don't know if you watch many Westerns or anything.
No, I don't.
No, you don't? Well, you should. They're really great. But if you have a big wooden rain barrel, okay, imagine on the inside of the rain barrel at the very bottom are all of our life's choices that we have to make, the healthy choices, okay? You know, what do we wear? What kind of shoes do we wear? How do we do our hair, except for me? You know, things like that. On the outside of the barrel at the very bottom are all kinds of little taps or spigots, valves, whatever you want to call them. Yeah. And those are our various coping skills, the way we get rid of excess emotion, okay? Emotion that goes in the barrel, whether it be positive or negative, all kind of mixes together. And as long as it's real shallow in the barrel, then we're pretty good. We can still make good choices. We live life okay, all right?
Right.
You know, sleeping is a real good coping skill. So you go to sleep, whatever's in the barrel drains out, and you're typically okay the next morning. But sometimes that barrel starts to fill up. And when it does and it reaches the brim, then we look in the barrel looking for those answers, and all we end up seeing is a lot of emotion.
Yeah.
And so we have to make choices, and they end up being very emotional choices, which sometimes are okay,
right,
but quite often they lead us in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and when we think about anxiety and for, you know, how everyone experiences it differently, what have you found for yourself as far as triggers that when you work with clients, what are the big triggers that you find?
Well, for me, honestly, when I experience anxiety, my heart just starts to beat a little bit faster.
Yeah. It's just what you experience, what you're feeling. One of the things, and I think that if you all please consider, like, think about when you're anxious and where you're at when you're anxious. I think this is going to help you when we get into thoughts, because I think different places we experience anxiety. Like for myself, I might get a little anxious if I'm in an elevator or in closed spaces.
Yeah,
right?
Claustrophobia or something like that. Some sort of phobias.
Like for you, what might be something?
Well, actually claustrophobia, okay?
Okay, that's
and
it
I'll
for
be
you?
honest, getting in the airplane when there's no way to get out, oh, that fills me with all kinds of anxiety.
So we all experience it in different situations.
That's right.
So it's recognizing, okay, these are the places I'm experiencing anxiety. Now, what is that really about? What is triggering my anxiety? And so I know you and I come from a different way of approaching anxiety, and they're both effective. I do a lot of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And for me, it's those thoughts. What thoughts are going through your head when you're experiencing getting into an airplane? Because you have thoughts going through your head, that's why you're getting anxious, right? Does that make sense for you too?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And like for that, you know, most people say, well, do you have a fear of death? Well, I don't personally, but I know some people that do. My fear is actually it's a control issue.
Yeah.
I am out of control of that airplane. So if
you can't fly that airplane.
That's right. If at any point I don't want to be on that airplane, I can't get out anymore.
Yeah.
So
it's writing that down. Okay, so one of the things we can do is what I tell my clients is, look, think about also some of your core beliefs that you may have initially when you were growing up in life. We get core beliefs, and they carry us into adulthood, and it often triggers our negative irrational thinking. For example, if I worked with someone with trauma, they may have an experience now that they don't feel good enough because of what they've been through.
Right.
Or I'm thinking of sexual abuse or something like that. And so in the present, all they can think about in that moment is when something negative happens in a relationship, oh, I'm not good enough, or they're not accepting me, and then they are flooded with irrational thoughts. And so does that make sense as well to you?
It does, yeah. And we see that a whole lot of people dealing with those irrational thoughts. So, and that's something that we're going to talk about, I think, in the next segment, right?
Yes, we're going to get more into that. And also something to think about is if you or anybody has unresolved stuff in their life, maybe it's the holiday season. There's a lot.
There's a lot of stuff.
There's a lot of stuff with different people, and if you carry that and you haven't resolved it, you're going to experience anxiety throughout your life. Like you're going to walk around with anxiety because you need to resolve that. So there's a lot of stuff when it comes to anxiety to think about.
I agree.
Yeah.
Zig Ziglar had a quote, and he called it stinking thinking.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that in the next segment, right?
Yeah, we're going to talk about stinking thinking and a lot more than that. And also how we can identify these irrational thoughts in our head and fortune telling, all this good stuff. So we're going to be right back. Stay tuned and write down some negative thoughts right now, and we're going to get through them.
Hope for Tomorrow is sponsored by Stonegate Center, providing effective Christian drug and alcohol addiction treatment for men.
Welcome back to Hope for Tomorrow. So if you have your notes now of your irrational thoughts or these thoughts that have been really upsetting you or getting you anxious, well, now we're going to talk about strategies, how we identify them as irrational, right? And you were talking about stinking thinking. So tell them exactly what that is and what that means.
Yeah, well, Zig Ziglar is the one that actually coined the phrase stinking thinking.
Yeah.
His exact quote is, every day we all need a checkup from the neck up to avoid stinking thinking and hardening of the attitudes.
Yeah.
And I really like that. Stinking thinking is really just what's going on in our brain all the time that's negative, that keeps us from moving forward, that keeps us from experiencing freedom in life, really.
Yeah, and it's about not staying in the moment because we get our minds going and our thoughts going, and that's what causes a lot of that anxiety.
Yeah, definitely.
And like we said last segment, the holidays are here, and so we get a lot of anxiety for different reasons. So one of the things I do with my clients is I say, look, you've written down your thoughts now, and at home I'm hoping you wrote down some thoughts. And we're going to talk about 5 of the 10, what Dr. Burns calls irrational thoughts, cognitive distortions. And we're going to have more on our Facebook page if they go to texas47.com. And click on our Facebook page. We'll have all 10 listed. So the first one I want to talk about is all or nothing thinking. This is when you see things in black and white categories. If your performance falls short of perfect, you see yourself as a total failure. So sometimes a thought can land in that category. Does that relate to you, Todd?
I hope not, but my wife would probably say something different. Yeah. But that kind of relates a little bit to, I see a lot of clients who have certain expectations that are not being met. Okay, and it's not that we shouldn't have expectations in life or whatever, but like you mentioned, the holiday season. I mean, how many people go out hoping to get that perfect toy, and they expect to get there early and get a great deal on it. They get there, it's gone. And it ruins their day, okay, because they can't get that one particular toy.
And then they say everything is ruined, and then that goes into the next irrational thought that you might have. Another category is mental filter. You pick out a single negative detail and dwell on it exclusively so that your vision of all reality becomes darkened. So that's a great example of that. You're like, oh, you know what, I didn't get that perfect toy for my nephew, my son, and now it's ruined, right? And you just get really sad and get anxious and upset about it.
Definitely.
The third one is a big one for my clients, jumping to conclusions, which I was guilty of this on the way out here, like I said. And what this is there's 2 of them. Mind reading, which I don't even know if I need to tell anyone what mind reading is. It's just reading people's thoughts. How often do we do that?
Well, it's not literally reading people's thoughts, right?
Yeah, it is.
It's really assuming that we understand what they're thinking. I mean, I laugh when my wife and I first got married. There was something that she fixed, and that I made a comment that I didn't like it right now.
Yeah.
So in her head, she categorized that as, oh, Todd doesn't like that. And she's not fixed it since then. But I'm like, I do like it. It's just at that particular time. But she assumes something on an ongoing basis. And I think a lot of people do that.
You made a good point. So from that experience, then from then on, she thought, oh, he's not going to like, he is not going to like it. And she was probably irritated with you.
Probably so.
And that really is, or you're at work and you see someone that doesn't, you wave to them or you say something and they're not really responsive.
Right.
And you're thinking, oh, what did I do? They're upset with me from yesterday. And really, they might have had something going on at home personally. So mind reading is something we all do. And again, it's just being aware that we're doing this and stopping that thought, changing it, or getting in the present moment, which we're going to talk about later.
Right.
The fortune teller error. This is, you anticipate that things will turn out badly and you feel convinced that your prediction is an established fact. Fortune telling happens when I was on the road driving. Oh no, there's a motorcycle there. What if I accidentally, there's sun in my eye, what if I swerve? What if I hit him accidentally? Then in my car, I'm not gonna make it to the tape. This is gonna be really overwhelming for me, right? So that's fortune telling. And then you get yourself anxious, right? So I think that we do this a lot. Can you think of an example that happened
I call
to
it
you?
the what ifs.
Yeah.
And we have a case of the what ifs.
Yeah, and the fortune telling one is where I have found people get panic attacks because they get so wrapped into the future.
Right.
They get so anxious, and they can't predict it.
We have to avoid those what ifs in fortune telling.
Avoid the fortune telling. To me is a big one. So I encourage people to really work on that. That's a big star one on that, because we all do it, and it's just being aware that we're doing it. The other one is labeling and mislabeling. This is an extreme form of overgeneralization. Instead of describing your error, you attach a negative label to yourself, like, "Oh wow, I messed up on that. I'm such a loser."
Right.
Does that?
Yeah.
Can you think of a client or yourself? Or?
Well, I mean, I think that we all experience that at some point in our life, labeling ourselves, but also labeling other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we really have to avoid, and especially in this day and time, because we're all different, and we see things differently, et cetera.
Yeah, and there doesn't help to label yourself or label somebody else. So we have one more, but again, this is going to be on our Facebook page if you go to Texas47.com. So next up, there are ways we can all be less anxious. If you do the work, which you need to do the work, you're going to see the results. Find out how we do that when we come back. Welcome back to the show. So you have your thoughts now. We've talked about in the segment about kind of the irrational thoughts. And now I want to talk about, let's talk about ways that they can get through these thoughts, right?
Yeah, how to manage the thoughts.
Yeah.
And
so what have you found when working with clients that have benefited them a lot?
Well, let me just first say that I love this segment.
Okay.
Teaching people how to manage our anxiety and our thoughts is a huge thing for me personally, and I'm sure to our viewers everywhere. There are quite a few different ways, but the first one I want to touch on, and I think you're going to also kind of touch on it, is just journaling out things,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people don't like to write these days, but I always say it's so much better to get a pen and paper and start writing out your thoughts and your feelings. And that's the basic way you can do it. It's free. I mean, well, you had to buy paper, but it's pretty much free, and you can do it at any time, any place for the rest of your life. So it's something that never goes away. Whereas there are a lot of other little coping skills that we have. Like, for instance, I have a couple of young kids. If they throw a temper tantrum where they're young, we kind of expect kids to throw a temper tantrum to get rid of anxiety or whatever, right?
Right.
But we, as adults, it's not appropriate to throw temper tantrums normally, right?
Right, so journaling is a great way to get your feelings out.
That's right.
So I want to take it even in deeper when we talk about writing and things like that, and I know our viewers right now have a paper and pen and are writing down all these things.
Good.
I'm going to give them an exercise that I use a lot in counseling, and it's called, and you're going to see it right now, it's called Challenge a Negative Thought. And so look at the thoughts that you wrote down this last segment, and we're going to do this right now. I thought it'd be helpful. So maybe that negative thought that I'm thinking of a client that I had, and they said, you know what, I'm just not good enough for any guy. I'm not good enough. And so I said, okay, let's talk about evidence that supports that statement. let's talk about the evidence. And she's like, well, let me think. So let's just even think about that if you were her. And she's like, I'm not good enough. Well,
maybe like I'm not pretty enough.
I don't think I'm pretty.
I don't have a good personality.
Okay. I don't think I'm pretty, right? So she writes that down. And then she kind of runs out, because usually they run out, because you really can't think of much to say that. That's
Right.
true. But then I said, let's talk about evidence that's against that statement, that makes that statement not true. And so I remember my client saying, well, I have a job, right? I have a car, I have my own house. I'm independent. And she's like, I think I'm pretty. And I think my weight is okay. That's one of the areas she struggled with. But the more and more she thought about it, she recognized, you know what, this is so really not true. This statement that I'm not good enough for any guy is really not real. It's really not true when I write it down. And that's a big key I tell my clients. If you want to get through anxiety, this exercise, and there's so many other exercises out there. Dr. David Burns is someone I refer to a lot. His book on feeling good and combating anxiety. It's exercises like this, and you have to be intentional and write them down. The journal exercise and doing things like this is what's really going to help reduce anxiety without medication. I've treated people with panic attacks because they do the work, right?
Right.
So
And that's a key issue. You got to be able to do the work and be willing to do the work.
This lady that said, I'm not good enough for any guy, then after she recognized that's not true, and then we think of a more balanced thought.
Right.
And which might be like, you know what, I am good enough. There might be a few things I need to work on, but overall, I feel like I am good enough.
Right.
So, okay, now you can.
Well, the simplified version is I use 3x5 index cards.
Yeah.
And I'll just have them put the negative thought on the front side, and then I'll make them on the flip side do a positive thought.
Love that.
So, and they can carry those with them usually, something like that. Very simple.
Dealing with survivors, a sexual abuse survivor that I worked with, she talked about that. She had little cards. When she had a negative thought, she had positive affirmations. She got like a little picture book, a photo book that you can get at Walmart for like a couple bucks.
Right.
And she filled it with index cards of affirmations, inspirational words, positive statements.
That's so fantastic.
And she pulled it out, and it keeps you in the moment.
It really does.
And washes away those negative thoughts.
And one real powerful thing that I want to mention real quickly is just good heavy breathing, good deep breathing. We call it diaphragmatic breathing because it's using your diaphragm to pull in good new oxygen. And that's the simplest thing you can do is when you're starting to feel a little bit panicky, just close your eyes, take a few good deep breaths, and it's amazing how much that'll wash away.
It will. And I had a panic attack, my only one. You had a panic attack too.
I had two.
And we're running out of time to share ours. Oh, you had two? And mine was in the water. And I remember I was swimming for a race. And I remember when my goggles fell off and I started getting anxious. And I remember the strategies that I'm talking to everyone about. And that's why we're able to manage them, because we all experience anxiety. But it's that deep breathing. That's one of the first things to calm you down and take in those deep breaths. Amazing how it can reduce anxiety. So you can start thinking through these thoughts, right? So some really great information. So what is the one thing we can all practice every day that's going to wash away any negative thoughts? Well, stay tuned to find out.
Hope for Tomorrow is sponsored by Stonegate Center, providing effective Christian drug and alcohol addiction treatment for men.
Welcome back to Hope for Tomorrow. So we've talked a lot today about our negative thoughts and how to work through them. But what I really want to talk about is just how to stay present, right? How to stay in the moment.
Right.
So one of the things I do with my clients is just to get them present and practicing that mindfulness is I do what I call the GLAD technique.
Okay, yeah.
And the GLAD technique, you just break down the word GLAD. And so G stands for gratitude, something you're grateful for today. Like, especially during the holidays, there's so many things we can be grateful for. I know we can look at the negative, but let's look at the positive, right? And then L is for learn. What did you learn today that was helpful? And it could be something really small. It doesn't have to be big. Maybe you just learned how to bake something or cook something. That's always great for me.
Right, eat something.
Accomplish today. A is for accomplishment. One thing you accomplished today, and it doesn't have to be big. It could be small. It could be going for a walk that you've been thinking of doing, but you're intentional about it. And then D is delight. One thing you delighted in, one thing that was really delightful. And I think if we can slow down, write it down, or just think through it, it's really powerful. And it's a technique that my clients really, they embrace it, they like it, and they do it often. So, but I know that for you, you had a story that reminds all of us about what we've talked about today.
Yeah, definitely. So the story happened quite a few years ago. I had to take my driving test 2 times before I got my license. Okay,
Wow.
so yeah, I know. Wow, what a loser. Yeah, but we're not going to say that. But all that to say, though, that what happened is, according to the police officer who did my driving test, he said I looked too much in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
And if you really think about it, that is learning how to be in the moment. That's not spending too much time looking in the past,
Yeah.
not spending a lot of time looking at way far in the future, but just really embracing where you are right now.
Being in the moment, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for today. Thanks so much for joining us. And if you have a question or comment about today's show, go to Texas47.com and click on our Facebook page. We would love to hear from you, and you may hear us discuss your question on a future show.
And next week, we'll get into the topic of addiction with an expert from Stonegate Center on ways to help yourself or someone you love.
Yep. Thanks for watching. Hope for tomorrow.
Hope for Tomorrow is sponsored by Stonegate Center, providing effective Christian drug and alcohol addiction treatment for men.